Get pucked. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Get Pucked podcast. Matt, Vito, Dave here with you. And yes, I know it's been a little bit of time. Let's get that out of the way right off the bat. There was obviously the holidays that took a little bit of our time. For the most part, we're all family guys here and with the kids and whatnot. And Vito with his dog, I'm sure he had a big Christmas celebration there over the holidays. So that took a little bit of our time.
My situation is a little more personal, but go for it.
That's it. So on top of that, there was obviously some personal related stuff that required us to step away, as well as illnesses. I think 3 out of 3 of us caught COVID at different times. So anyways, happy news. We're back. And for everybody that stuck around and a couple people that reached out to us that asked if we're still doing this thing, thanks so much. It's nice to know that we were missed by at least a couple of you. So that out of the way, let's get into some hockey news 2024 edition. There's a few things right off the bat on this particular day. There's something actually not Habs related, but I do want to touch about it just quickly. The Nylander contract seems to be coming to a head over in Toronto. This is going to be a monster contract by the looks of it, by the rumblings that are out there at this present time. It looks like 8 years is what's on the table, $92 million in total. That is going to put him as the most highest paid Leaf, if I'm not mistaken.
Overall contract.
Not
per year cap, but
yeah, because Matthews is only on a 4-year deal. Right. So just out of curiosity, just quickly, because we always talk about, and a lot of people in this market talk about the way a team is structured and built, and you need these superstars, but to get superstars, you got to pay them, and then you become top heavy. And so what do you guys feel? Like, do you think the Leafs, obviously this doesn't change the team. This is what their team has been, the big four now for a couple of years, and they haven't achieved much success with them. But now they're going all in. Is this a matter of just, it's only a matter of time until they bust through and you got to pay the guys that earn the big bucks? You got to pay these guys to keep them? Or is it more a fear from a GM perspective that you don't want to be the guy that lets one of these big guys walk and then everybody rags on you? And so you're forced kind of to pay, even though you probably don't want 4 guys making like $11 million a piece on your team. What do you think about that? How do you stand?
First off, if that's the deal for Nylander, I like it. I mean, I think it was important for them to lock down Nylander. I think he's a guy who actually performs in the playoffs. He's a clutch guy. He's always there when they need him. And he gets a lot of hate from that fan base over there. But I think he's probably one of the most important, one of the top 4 of the big 4 over there. So obviously Austin Matthews a little bit more, but William Nylander's right there to me over Mitch Marner even. And I think at the end of the day, like, look, this is what the Leafs are. They need to win with this group going forward. And I think that, you know, barring some bad luck or like, you know, the playoffs are such a coin toss, right? Like there's so many good teams have never gone to where they needed to go. And now obviously it's a running gag with them because it seems to be the same result year after year. But at the end of the day, like these things could have flipped either way and we wouldn't be talking about these storylines, right? It's just like a good bounce here, a good day there. And we're not talking about this anymore. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the way the Leafs are built. Obviously, like you'd like to see them getting better goaltending. If like they have some major flaws that they've addressed, but they failed to properly address, and they've taken some chances and they've rolled some dice and it hasn't worked out. But again, one of those dice rolls works out, and we're not talking the way we're talking about the Leafs right now. So I think it's good. I think you can't let guys like Nylander, Marner, Matt, like you have a stud lineup. You have to keep them, and I think it's okay. There's a way to balance. If you're a good general manager, there's a way to find balance in that lineup and find gems elsewhere and find value elsewhere. I think it's the right move for them. Now, if they could find some goaltending, it'd be great. That isn't Martin Jones, which is like he's playing so well, but like what?
Who's to say? Maybe that's the dice roll that you're suggesting. Okay, maybe. Interesting. All right, so you're all for it, and I mean, I kind of expected you to be, given that I think you've said in the past that Nylander was like one of your I don't know, wishful thoughts to kind of get to the offseason and free agents and Habs go all in on him. Okay.
He is somehow underrated. He is somehow underrated, which he should.
I know. It's odd. I like Nylander too. He's also a Habs killer, so having him here would be a nice thing too. Vito, what do you think about it? Just quickly before we get to Habs talk.
I think they have too much skill up front, and they don't have enough money because we're in the cap era to round out the rest of their team. You got four guys making a little over $11 million or more, and it's just you can't do that in a cap world. Something's got to give. I think the biggest mistake was years ago giving John Tavares that contract, albeit he's done pretty well with the Toronto Maple Leafs from a statistical standpoint, very similar to the numbers he was putting up with the Islanders. However, they've got too much skill up front and not enough to round out the rest of the team. Their defense is still pretty questionable. I mean, yeah, you have Morgan Riley and you have some pieces there that are serviceable, but not enough to say that you're a contender. And they've been having a goaltender issue for as long as I can remember. Matt Murray wasn't the answer. Samsonov clearly isn't the answer. Guy got put on waivers after they sacrificed a second-round pick for him. Now they have Martin Jones, old man Martin Jones, there as playing as their number one, and they're just trying to get a revolving door of meh goalies. And if they would have put the money towards other aspects of that team, they probably would have more success. It's no guarantee because nothing's guaranteed in the NHL. But you have four guys that are eating up the majority of the cap. Now, some might argue, okay, this coming off season, the cap is going to go up, but they somehow always find a way to still just put it on offense. And while we are more in an offense-driven type of hockey these days, they still need character, and they need certain defensemen, and they need certain pieces to round out the rest of the team. I don't have faith in the Leafs going forward to say that they're a true contender. They're going to put up points. They're going to put up, they're always going to be up there in the standings because of the firepower that they have. But they haven't proven that these are the guys that can ride the ship through the playoffs.
Okay. So just then you wouldn't have given Nylander this contract?
I understand why they gave Nylander the contract. I think it goes to what you said. I think any GM who would have stepped in, doesn't matter who it was, whether it was Dubas or whether it's Treliving, it's hard to let these types of guys walk when you have them. So you throw the money at them, you try to keep them. Because it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If they let him walk, people are going to crucify him. If they don't let him walk and they sign him, people are still going to crucify him. So it's like, what do? They had no choice. If I were them, if I was the GM, you'd have to try to figure out a way to move Tavares. Because I'd rather keep the other three and not Tavares.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily in the cards for them, but I'm of the same sentiment of as you guys as it pertains to this. I mean, I'm more leaning towards, yes, he's great. You can't let him go. So obviously it's not just like, oh, you're throwing money at whoever. This is a top player on their team and arguably an underrated top player in the NHL. It's just, this is a lot of money to invest in four guys that, like Vito was suggesting, they're all up front. Your goaltender is rough. Your defense is not great. The bottom, 6, 9, bottom 9 of your top lines there, is anyways, it's interesting to see what's going to happen because all these things, the fun thing about this, again, right before we get off Toronto, is that when a team has success, if they go far, then suddenly it's a copycat league. Other GMs are going to see it, and that's going to be kind of the recipe. They're going to throw big money at superstars, and teams are going to be built around like 3, 4-ish guys, and it's like that's the mold they're going to go with.
You have two teams in the NHL that are like that, and both of them are struggling to have that playoff success and that Stanley Cup run and all of that. The Edmonton Oilers are one, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are the other ones.
Well, Edmonton Oilers is. Well, hold on, because Edmonton was like a two-headed dragon until Hyman now is on a 50-goal pace. You can't really put the Nuge up there too much. He's good, but he's not in the same level as the four guys over in Toronto. So who's the other big ones in Edmonton?
There's a lot of similarities there. First off, you look at McDavid, and he's two players by himself, statistically speaking.
Okay, but realistically, name me four guys.
Okay, so the four guys, McDavid, Draisaitl. I would put the Nuge there,
but he doesn't make that kind of money. So already we're not even talking about the same thing.
Yeah, but
the fourth would be Zach Hyman, obviously.
Yeah, it would be. It would be.
And defensively, on the defensive side, I mean, Toronto doesn't have a Darnell Nurse, although he is grossly overpaid. And you can say statistically, Evan Bouchard is better than.
I like I like
Then Morgan
Edmonton's
Riley.
defense more than Toronto, but I mean, if you wanted to take a better comparison, it's better to look over at Pittsburgh as the 4 big dogs that are there. If you want to
Yeah, but
compare it to Toronto,
you want to
but
go
it's
Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh
yeah,
won 3 Stanley Cups.
exactly. It's not the same thing. So, and of course, Crosby, he's older now, but his money's down. He took that 8.7
you want to know
thing,
who's a team that's more well-rounded and has firepower that people argue and debate all the time? Is Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado's got the firepower and they have a more well-balanced team.
Yeah, because look at what guys are making. Are any of them making $11 million?
Well, now that comes back to a point that I was going to bring up. I was just waiting for everybody to finish here. Nylander's contract, I understand giving it to him, but the 4 players that have signed with Toronto, they had all the leverage and they got everything they asked for. They're getting signing bonuses. Their contracts are going to be really difficult to move going forward, even if teams want to take. Let's say they become available, which they won't, but they're going to be hard to move. It's all upfront money, most of it with a bunch of signing bonuses, no movement clauses everywhere. The players have full control.
Yeah,
it's
they're all in.
Players
The Leafs are all in.
But they've been all in.
I know. They've been all in.
Now,
look, you can argue, there's some hits and misses there, and they're trying to do their best, but it's just like they're missing a few key pieces, and it's hard. But like I feel that it's winnable with this, like maybe with a different route. Matt Murray was never going to be the answer. That was a disaster waiting to happen. Okay, Samsonov was fine. Rolling the dice on him is fine, but everybody else, like it's just like they rolled the dice on Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi and stuff like that, and it's just I feel as though they could have taken other chances that like same type of players for the same type of money and filled in a better roster. So I do think that the potential to win is there with 4 guys up front like that. In
my opinion, having the goalies that they went and acquire, Samsonov, Martin Jones, and all that, instead of putting the money on, everyone was calling it they needed grit and sandpaper, and God, they did really need that. But go put a better defensive core in front of those goalies, and maybe those goalies are not as bad or letting in as many goals.
You guys are also forgetting Justin Hall, right? Like, I think he's their actual goalie until he got hurt. The kid.
Hall is the defenseman,
or not the defenseman. Who's the
Joseph Wall? Joseph Wall,
not Hall. Yeah.
Yes, that's also
the actual that they got lucky. Like to Dave's point about getting lucky and rolling the dice. This kid was kind of, what do they got going on here? And unfortunately, he goes down. And now you're kind of finding a little bit of luck with Martin Jones. But prior to that, they went with Samsonov, and that was a disaster. And so, anyways, it's one of those interesting situations. I agree with Dave. I think there is potential there, but I understand you guys have more to say about this. I really don't want to spend any more time talking about Toronto.
Yeah, let's move on.
We went off the topic that
let's talk about you see that logo and the overlay right there.
You want Toronto. There's a lot of good stuff out there for you to go listen to. Go find them. Habs related stuff. Right off the bat, just right away. Is Arber Xhekaj in the wrong league? Does he need to be up immediately? Or is there not really a spot anymore? Did he get replaced by Struble? And then moreover, this defensive kind of diamond field that the Habs have in these young guys, what's going to happen here? Because you would think the smart money is they have so many good prospects and guys that are showing skill on the ice well beyond their years. They should be able to get a bunch of them together and go and acquire a top 6 forward. No? Am I crazy? Is it too early? You don't think other people would do it?
So these are 2 massively different questions that you just posed.
Feel free to answer the first one quickly, and then more importantly, the second one.
Yeah, I figured. I'm as big an Arber Xhekaj fan as you could probably. I was rooting for him from the get-go. I like his style of play. I don't think he's in the wrong league. I don't think it's important. He's developed. He is what he is at the NHL level, right? I don't think you could fine tune his game a little bit here or there, but I think he is what he is. What you see is what you get with Arber Xhekaj, and he's a guy who you could call up when you need him and you could put back down when you don't. I don't see him as oh man, he must be on this team. Like he's never going to be a top 4 defenseman. He's not. He's a fun guy, fan favorite guy who plays on the back end, who plays rough, who gives you grit, who gives you toughness. But at the end of the day, it's time to see It's time to see. It's time to see the actual studs in defense and the future, and to see what you got with them. So I'm perfectly okay with him being in the NHL. As for the other question, I mean, I think again, you're watching it under the microscope and the lens of the Montreal Canadiens and the fan base. Like, I don't think other teams are like looking at Justin Barron and being like, man, I have to get him. I'm going to give up a top 6 forward for him. Like, I just don't
but
see
that's
it.
why I'm saying package wise. Like, I don't think any of the guys they have right now nets you a top 6 forward from another team. But I think, given what you have playing now and given what's currently in the AHL doing its thing, and I'm not talking about the Norlanders of the world. I'm talking about Mailloux. I'm talking about Reinbacher. I'm talking about Harris and Struble and all of these younger guys. I'm not saying trade them all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you have them all and they all can't play. So what are you going to do with them?
But do they have value though? Like, if you're watching,
that's what I'm asking. Do they have value?
I don't think they do. Not yet. I don't think they do. I'm sorry. The Canadiens are not world beaters with these guys in the lineup. Like, okay, they're playing good. They're playing well. I don't know, man. They're not like can't miss. Like, to me, they're not. They haven't, like, obviously other than like a Kane Gooley, but like that guys like that are not going to move. So there's no point in talking about that stuff like that. So like, I don't know if I'm an NHL team and I'm like, oh, I'm going to give up a top 6 forward to roll the dice on Jordan Harris and whoever else you want to package them with. I think they're it's fine, and where they are in their development is promising, and I think it's exciting, and I think it's okay to be excited about what's coming. I just don't think they have a trade value yet. I think that it's a mistake to think it would be probably as an addition. Okay, you're getting this nice defensive prospect plus. And that's where the value would lie. But I don't think like a couple of unproven defensive prospects, because again, you could talk all you want. I don't think any of these guys so far are proven. I'm not sold on any of them as being.
Would you be? And we'll get to you in a second, Vito, because I know you got something to say. Would you be more? Is it a sexier package? Is it a sexier package if I say something more like David Savard plus one of the better prospects? It won't get you
a top 6.
It won't get you a top 6 forward, because the type of team that's getting David Savard needs their top 6 forwards. You know what I mean? They're not dealing their top six
potential, like a prospect that's really cutting it in there.
I mean,
that's a different story.
So yeah, exactly. If you talk about, like, you're talking about a prospect, an offensive prospect that could potentially play in your top 6, then yes, I think that's potentially possible. But a current top 6 guy, I don't see it happening.
Well, what would Kent Hughes, Vito, we'll pivot to you for this one. Do you think Kent Hughes is more inclined to go get a proven top 6 now and try to make something happen? Or would he be comfortable going to get a prospect potential top 6?
No, I think even though the Montreal Canadiens are achieving a little more than people expected this year, I think they're par for the course. They're sticking to their plan. If they're going to go and get a player, it's going to be somebody who is not there today. It could be more for tomorrow. And it will help the Montreal Canadiens long term, not just in the short term or the mid term. That's where I think Kent Hughes would go. So I would think that he's going to go more for a player that they can, put under Martin St. Louis' tutelage, that's got the upside, that's got the skill set and the tools that they're maybe looking for that can fit into a top 6, similar to what they believe Newhook could be. But I don't think they would get a top 6 that's ready to slot into the roster right now with the types of players that you're talking about. The only way you're going to get that kind of guy, this is something I do agree with Dave on, is if you're moving a Caden Gooley, which is not happening, because he's the only one that's proven that still has a lot more upside, can eat minutes,
I don't
he's
think
not only
Gooley's
there.
moving either.
So Gooley's not moving. Now, where I disagree with Dave is about Xhekaj. I think Xhekaj going to the AHL was beneficial for him. I think he needed to round out his game. I think he got caught up in the hype of being the kind of
sheriff.
like the sheriff, the modern day goon, the police officer on the ice, and that was, I think, hindering his game a little bit. I think there's a bit of he's got some untapped potential offensively there that I think could work if he's coached the right way in the NHL. He's got a cannon of a shot. They could leverage that. I'm not saying he has to be a number 1 power play guy, but he could be somebody that can be on the second power play. His wrist shots or snaps tend to hit the net more often than not. He's got some untapped potential offensively there. His defensive game is where it seems like they wanted him to go work on in the AHL, where they just want him to get back on track of being a defenseman, do the little things right. Don't just go out and try to intimidate everybody and whatnot. But one of the things that are working with the Laval Rocket is the fact that people know he's on the ice, and they second guess themselves in certain things that they would most normally get away with. And right now, Montreal is lacking that. You can see there's some games lately that players
Okay.
are taking liberties with the roster, and they could benefit from having someone like Xhekaj to fight if need be. If need be, not the way he was before.
But
at least
you took my bait now. You took my bait now. Who does he take the place of? Yeah, big sigh. That's what I thought. That's the problem.
I think that no, it's not really a problem. I think that the Habs could use somebody like Xhekaj more so than somebody like Jordan Harris right now.
But Harris isn't playing.
Harris has been playing. It has been a game off, a game on, a game off.
Right now,
the
team that just played the New York Rangers, one of the better teams in the league, and beat them. Who in that top 6 do you take out and put Arber Xhekaj in? Don't tell me Harris. He's not even in the lineup right now.
I would, given that he just got to the NHL, and although he's playing very well, I would give Struble a game off.
You're a sick man.
And put Xhekaj in there. Yeah, why not?
Struble, by the way,
tell you this.
Was a
Xhekaj right now is one of the only prospects, if you want to call him a prospect defenseman, that is a little more proven and is attractive to other teams come playoff time. Now, I don't want to trade Xhekaj.
There's my new pivot. You keep coming to where I want you to go, my man.
I'm not trading Xhekaj.
Is he not the best trade chip to package with something to get you something good? Doesn't he fit?
Yes, but I think it would be a giant mistake for the Montreal Canadiens to trade him.
Giant mistake. Mistake?
Yeah. Yes, because he's a type of player that is rare now.
Set him straight, Dave.
I mean, if you could deal Xhekaj, I think you should. Again, I think we're overvaluing his value around the league. I think he's an exciting guy. You could probably deal him. There probably will be teams calling, hey, what can I do to get Xhekaj off your hands? I don't think you're going to get the return that Kent Hughes will want. So I don't think it'll happen, in my opinion. I think you'll be disappointed by whatever return you'll see Xhekaj gets you. I don't think there's too many playoff teams giving up so much to acquire a 6th defenseman. You know what I mean? Like I just don't see it.
I just don't believe that he's only a 6th defenseman.
Okay, well
you think Xhekaj is a top 4? Don't tell me top 2. I'll give you top 4. Top 4 is what you're saying?
I think Xhekaj has the potential, the upside to
on a good team. On a good team. On a Stanley Cup contender.
If he reaches everything and uses his entire body of work and skill set and it gets to that, he can be a 4.
Whew, okay. Wow. That's I mean, look, I like
ideal position is 5, 6. That's
like your optimism.
But I believe he can be
but again, there's no team that's going to deal you a top prospect or whatnot for Xhekaj for a guy who might, if he hits his top potential, be in the top.
I like Xhekaj. I like Xhekaj on the team. I like the physicality. I like the sheriff thing behind him. I like that he's a guy that's out there that's going to stand up for people. This is good. I like his shot, like you said. But I think overall, the ceiling, he's a bottom 6 defenseman ceiling wise. I don't see it the way you see it, and I like the kid a lot. I like his story. I like him. I like his personality. But if other teams see him kind of the way you see him, Vito, I 100% put him in a package, and I get something that the team needs because there are just
there's already
other guys that could do what he does.
There's already analysts that have come out, and albeit they're analysts from the Montreal media for the most part, but they've already come out and said that in a sense, somebody like Xhekaj can and is probably already more valuable than somebody like Justin Barron. People are already saying that because of his physicality, because of his size, because of he's got the shot. There's things you could plug him in different aspects of the game. As for somebody like Justin Barron, you know what you're getting with him.
Okay, but that's a fair statement, but it does not mean that if Justin Barron's value is going to be in the top 4 if he can be a top 4 defenseman. And right now, I don't think he's there, but maybe eventually he could come there. You're right. He probably as a bottom 6, like you'd want a little bit more grit, a guy who could do a little bit more versatility. You're right in that sense, but I just don't see like the potential for Justin Barron is more than Arber Xhekaj.
Yes, that's the winner right there. If Justin Barron hits where he can hit, he's going to be a top 4 defenseman without question.
So let me
and he's still got more time to get there than Arber Xhekaj where not this, I don't necessarily think like Dave, like this is what he is. I think there is still a little bit of room to continue to grow and make himself an actual NHL everyday defenseman. I don't think he belongs in the AHL, but I don't think you could look at anybody on this team. And to Dave's point, this is not a great team. So just on this team, I think he has a hard time getting back in. I think that's proven right now, given that he's sitting in the AHL. I mean, how much more refinement does he need? He's been up there the whole time. Now he lost his spot.
He's succeeding in the AHL right now, and I think that's what he needed to do. He needed to go
because he's a tweener. He's a tweener. He should be a 6. If he hits the top of this plateau, it could be an everyday 5 and border on second pairing. But like, he's not going to be a top 4. Justin Barron is projected and has a lot of that out there in his game to show that he is going to be a top 4.
Listen,
he just has to refine his thing.
And Xhekaj, just to creep in there for 2 seconds, Xhekaj is suited. His game is suited for the AHL. You know what I mean? Like, he is suited to be an AHL player. So like him going back down, like when you send Cole Caulfield down to the AHL or a player like that, like they're not necessarily going to blow up the league because they're not, you know what I mean? Like, they need playmakers on their side. They need to get the puck. They need to. So when you send a guy like Xhekaj down, like, he's suited for the AHL. He could play in any league. That's why he could be an NHLer, and he is probably an NHLer. But he will perform well in the AHL as well, and that's why you're seeing how he's playing there. He was never going to be a guy who went to the AHL and wilted. You know what I mean?
I'm kind of also interested, just on our last topic here, because the Habs are in a very familiar place in the standings right now. It's a place we don't like. They're a couple of points out of a playoff. They are missing some serious pieces that are out for the season on their team, so they're kind of getting there on sheer will and determination, John Wick style, and
all overtime and shootouts.
Yeah, overtime wins, shootout wins. None of them really seem to be like full blown. Yep, they won this game start to finish. There's a lot of development happening on the team with a lot of kids still that's there, and this is great. But they find themselves in a spot where, and still with 3 goalies on the roster, I might add, are we destined as fans to just get comfortable in this spot? Should people take a step back and realize, obviously, you have no control over the situation, enjoy the ride, and don't think about the fact that, they're going to probably miss the playoffs by a bit and therefore get a outside the top 10 pick? Or, you know what, just...
They're exactly where we projected at the start of the season.
But also, like
at the start of the season, if they were going to have a good year, like what we want for the Montreal Canadiens this year was that they would finish 8, 9, 10. And right now in the standings, they're 9 at the bottom.
And they're also they're 4, like, okay, they're 5 points out of a playoff spot, yes, but there's a whole bunch of teams ahead of them. But they're only 4 points back from being second to worst in the East, and 4 points back from being a top 5 pick overall in the NHL. So I think they are, to Vito's point, exactly where they're supposed to be. I don't think anybody is really looking at them and being like, they're 5 points out of a playoff spot, they're going to make that push. I think that more than likely you'll see them fade here a little bit as we go on.
I think it's circumstantial too when you think of it, right? There's 2 or 3 teams that are below the Montreal Canadiens that were projected to be way higher up in the standings. Mm-hmm. Buffalo, Ottawa, off the top of my head, even
Ottawa, forget them.
But either way, people expected them to be way higher in the standings, especially with the firepower that they have. I think Dave was the one who said that Seattle is in and around where Montreal is at right now in the standings, and they weren't going to replicate what they did last year. But there's teams that are like behind them or slightly ahead of them that we expect or people projected to be way higher up in the standings. So if you think of it, those 2 teams that I mentioned, Ottawa and Buffalo, for example, if they were to be where people had projected them to be, Montreal would actually be around 7 from the bottom.
Okay, but this whole what if situation is what plays out all over social media, and that's what bothers people a lot. So just staying to the facts, they are a handful of points out of a playoff spot. So do you believe it's more likely that they're gonna fade, more injuries pile up, teams buckle down, and they end up falling down into a 7 or 6 spot in the potential draft lottery? Yes. Or is this team somehow gonna push themselves into potentially a bubble and just make it or just miss it, which is
No, I
No.
can't
I
happen
don't
to you, Dave.
I don't
No.
I don't think they're that team. I don't think they're that team
Okay.
that's there. I mean, I just think, look, I mean, Sam Montembeault has been robbing, like stealing some games here or there. I think that you still have to play Jake Allen. You still have to play maybe Caden Primo. Who knows how this goes? So you're going to rack up some L's. You're going to start dealing some pieces at the deadline. You're going to start to fade here. You're going to see it a little bit. Teams are going to, it's just,
And look
it
at
is
the
what it
teams.
is.
Look at the teams that are ahead of them by a few points.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay, New Jersey, all for wild card spot. Pittsburgh, like Detroit. Those teams are all ahead of Montreal to begin with. So Montreal making the playoffs is very unlikely. And there's some teams that are in the back that are starting to pick up their game. Buffalo's 1 point behind Montreal now, so they're gonna probably jump Montreal on that. It's like you're gonna see Montreal go down somewhere where we predicted when everybody asked what would be a good season for a rebuilding team is 7, 8, 9, 10. 7, 8, 9, around there.
And I think, again, I say this often, but the Canadiens are benefiting from the fact that everyone's probably taking them lightly, right? So they're racking up some wins that way, some surprise wins where they come in.
You think so?
I think so. I still think that
teams are taking them lightly still.
Of course, I think so. I think they see them as, they were a bottom 5 team last year. They're not going to be. They're in a rebuild. I don't think they. I don't think they it's the NHL, right? So everyone's competing, but I just think that they're not game planning as much. They're not looking ahead as much. Like if there's any time for these guys to like quote unquote take a day off, which we all know happens in the NHL, you'll never convince me otherwise. It's a reason why the Leafs. Look at the Leafs. Look at the Leafs. Every time we open it with the Leafs, let's talk with the Leafs now. Every time they play a team that is terrible, they lose. Why do you think that happens? You think it's because they play down to their level. They don't prep. They don't watch the tape. They don't work as hard. And it's the truth, though. It's the truth. There's nothing, and this happens year in and year out for a lot of teams. It's these guys are human beings, and you go in a game and you're going to play the Montreal Canadiens. Okay.
Still think the biggest surprise this year in the standings is Ottawa. That's just.
They're a mess.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast of like a 45-minute talk to dive deep into what happened there and what's going on, and hopefully someone from the Ottawa segment of the fan base can handle that. I don't think I have it in me emotionally to even go there. It's such a whirlwind. I'm not a huge Ottawa fan, but I mean, it's just, you would have thought after all these years, give the fans there a little something, and the team was kind of coming together, and then just so.
Jacques Martin as a head coach, not on my.
But on paper, you look at the roster and you're like, okay, this is a team that's gonna really compete. Okay, their goaltending was questionable because giving $4.5 million to Korpisalo was rough. But I mean, you look and you say they have the pieces you need, they have the firepower, they have the names on paper, but something's not clicking there.
Yeah, for sure. And they went and made some bold moves. Getting DeBrincat. I think it was one of them. It didn't work. Like, not obviously this year, but I mean in the past, like they've rolled the dice and they've done some good things. And then you just kind of look at them and you're like, man, they're just going to Ottawa Senator. That's what they are. There's no other description for it.
It's a bit odd, like we were alluding to quickly there. There's a lot of interesting things in the NHL right now. I mean, looking at the teams that aren't succeeding when you expected them to, it was a bit of a shock. Teams like Winnipeg that are sitting at the top of the NHL. Like what? I mean, there's just the NHL, the parity in the league is phenomenal. It's a lot of fun. It's interesting, although it does lead to frustrating situations like it does for the Habs and the fan base here, which now the team is kind of like, where do you go? Like, are they staying the path? Are they gonna try to acquire? Are they gonna try to get rid of? It's interesting to see what's going to play out in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to be following that as now that we're back, ladies and gentlemen.
I just got to point out one thing.
Please point out one thing, Dave.
I understand what Vito said before about how, like, you're not in the market for a top 6 forward because they're not there yet. They got to stay the course. But at one point, like, I'm done with the prospects. You know what I mean? Like, I'm done waiting for prospects and getting prospects and just hoping that they work out and this and that. Like, you got to start getting NHL caliber guys. And I'm kind of done with it. The Justin Barron is going to be amazing. Emil Heineman is going to be amazing. Yeah. I'm kind of done with it now. Now it's like, we're moving forward. You don't have to go and break the bank right away. The Habs are not competing right away. I understand that. But at one point you can get a roster player that's good, a proven bona fide top six that's going to fit into your vision for the next few years. That's what he has to go at this point, because moving, you're going to trade Sean Monahan for another first round pick, it's like you start to need to see something coming in a little bit.
Right. But what assets do they have right now?
Picks, prospects. I mean,
yeah, it's picks and prospects. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is if the team on the other side is willing to move a top six for picks and prospects, unless they know it's a top six that wants out of that organization.
It's about the situation that team finds itself in. Cap crunch, player on expiring contracts. That's how you got to get these things.
Exactly.
Because an actual hockey trade is not going to happen. But that does lead an interesting question that I'm going to lead to anybody who made it here to the end. Thank you so much for listening. Is there somebody out there that you smart hockey people listening to us, that you are sitting back and thinking to yourselves, man, please, either at the trade deadline or in the offseason, this is the guy I want. This is the guy I see fitting into this team in the top six. Trade what it takes, prospects, picks, throw what you got to throw at it. This is a guy that I think is going to round out that top six perfectly for the Canadiens. We'd love to know who you got in your mind as to who that's going to be, and it's going to be somebody that we're going to bring up on the next episode. That's the homework for you, gentlemen. Come back to me. Tell me who's your unicorn. Who's coming into this team in the top six from another team? I don't care how the trade happens, but who's it going to be that's going to come in here that you think that is like, that is a Montreal Canadian top six player right there?
I've never been great with homework, but we'll see.
I'll remind you a couple times, Dave. Don't you worry about it.
Fair enough.
Thank you very much, everybody. We're happy to be back. This was a lot of fun. For everybody that stuck around, everybody again that asked about how we're doing and what's going on, thank you so much. We appreciate every single one of you, and keep an eye out on that social media stuff for when the next episode's coming out, and interact with us. We love that too. Also, like, subscribe, that whole jazz. So for Dave and Vito, I'm Matt, and happily this was
Get Pucked.